one of the things I was thinking about when you were mentioning the B.F. Skinner and like not reading Chomsky's critique, like I was just watching Joe Rogan ranting about how Dawkins has never taken psychedelics, and he's like, listen, he's like, you're gonna die soon, like you're just not gonna open with that, you're just not gonna open to that, you're just not gonna grapple with that, and like the fact that
that's a great example. Dawkins also wouldn't look at Sheldrake's data.
Yeah,
like, and I mean, Sheldrake was like, here's all my data.
Yeah.
And Dawkins was like, I don't need to look at it.
Yep, nah. Just doesn't go with my view, doesn't go with my identity, and I'm just not going to open to that. And that's the fundamentalism that's there, not just in traditional kind of religions and traditional expressions of religion, but you see this with science or capitalism, entrepreneurship, anything. That fundamentalism is really the issue, not religion or science.
Yeah, I would say some type of scientific humanism now might be called transhumanism is the dominant religion right now. And by that, I mean, not with the most people, but with the most power to shape the future. And it doesn't understand itself as a religion. And it is dogmatically dismissive of evidence to the contrary, for sure, with a vehemency that feels like a religious fervor. And this has always been one of the things that has been pointed out about the new atheists and other people of that ilk, where it's like, you guys are like proselytizing this view, like you guys are religiously anti-religious, you're like theologically against God, like. And it was just funny. And the same thing about transhumanism and like the Omega Point and, uploading your brain to the mainframe and living forever and the AI that will save us all. And that all sounds so obviously religious. And yet it is said by people who would kind of not say that. They'd be like, no, this is actually the most reasonable scientific worldview. So it's interesting, back to the kind of psychoanalytical look at what worldviews really are and what it would mean to be grounding your worldview in your lived experience and in ritual and community, rather than grounding your worldview in something else, right? In nothing is one way to think about it. Because if it is the case that you're a radically constructivist and you're a technological design guy, then basically the world is literally yours to create. And this is, again, back to Bostrom's thought experiments of total omnipotent control of the universe and his own subjective experience, down to the nanotechnological surgery of ideas he doesn't like from his own brain, right? So that type of fantasy of omnipotent control is a classic first-order primary defense mechanism, usually found in young kids, but also found in adults under extreme duress, where in order to deal with your overwhelming sense of anxiety, you fantasize about you or your parent or somebody having complete omnipotent control over reality. And this is dozens of pages in Bostrom's work are concerned with what happens when humans have omnipotent control over the universe. It's like, dude, that's not a serious question. That's only a question you ask if you're engaging in defense mechanism around that requires you to think that someday there'll be omnipotent control, because otherwise you feel everything's out of control. Well, guess what? It is, bro. Like, it is. The ability for the human to be subordinate to values that it lives within and depends upon, which is what's sometimes called, Schleiermacher called it, in theological terms, ontological dependency. Right? So faith is the result of recognition of appropriate ontological dependency. Fantasy of omnipotence is absence of faith, is the belief that I have to be in control of everything.
There's nothing greater. Yeah.
Yes, I am not safe. Right. I wish it was different. I wish it was the case that there were several viable competing worldviews dominant in the public culture that were rich with meaning, that were coherently interpreting human history and their own phenomenological experience, that were raising beautiful people. And it was like, but that's not what we have. We have a public culture that's fragmented, that's deeply confused and getting more confused about what the human is. And therefore getting more confused about what is valuable, what they actually want from life, and what the species wants from its time on the planet. So, yep. Sorry to like end on a downer, but it's like serious topics.